Welcome back to another episode of Operation Evil. I'm your host, Nyoka, and you know who we have on the podcast today? Give it up for Heather. Yay!
Hi, it's me.
Yay. Heather's got a case for us today. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is probably episode 149. We're almost at 150. I mean, that is amazing.
It
Talking
is.
about that many cases. That's just insane. But
I,
anyways, I cannot wait to hear about this because I read a little bit that you sent me, but I need to
mm,
know all the things
mm,
and
all the things.
all the things. So I'm ready
All the
whenever
things.
you're ready.
All right. This is Suitcases by the Shore, the story of Melanie McGuire. She was dubbed a suitcase killer,
I just
not
want to
the
say,
one who.
how many people kill in a suitcase? Apparently two, because this is going to be a
Well,
second suitcase killer.
then there's another one. They just found all those little kids in suitcases. And then there was
Oh
a one
my
over here in Ohio where they found. So apparently there's a lot of suitcase killers.
dang. All right, go
I'm
ahead. I'm
sorry.
sorry.
So this is the story of Melanie McGuire, as I said. The story of love, deception, and mystery. This is Melanie Lynn McGuire, the woman in the media. They dubbed her the suitcase killer. So her name gripped the headlines when three, not one, not two, but three designer suitcases washed up on shore near Chesapeake Bay. And they revealed a terror no one in suburbia New Jersey expected. So Melanie McGuire wasn't a stranger to success. She was born in 1972 in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and she built a reputable life for herself as a registered nurse. And she specialized in reproductive health. She fell in love with and married William Bill T. McGuire. He was a former U.S. Navy veteran and a computer programmer. They had two young sons together, and they appeared to be planning a big future. But in late April of 2004, sorry, I messed that all up, the McGuires decided that they needed a larger home. So a move that would put them on the map of society, so to speak, right? And it was giving them a new chapter for their family. But as the sale closed on that April day, April 28th, the world as they knew it began to unravel. That evening, Bill disappeared.
Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm. So Melanie told her friends and later told the police that they had argued and that he left in anger and she didn't see him. In the days that followed, she filed for a restraining order to back up her story about the argument and some violence. And then she went ahead and filed for divorce, setting this narrative for domestic violence. But this explanation would soon collide with the shocking discovery. So in early of May of 2004, a couple of weeks later, a fisherman in the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel area pulled a dark green Kenneth Cole suitcase from the water. It was heavy and out of place. Of course, who puts a suitcase in the ocean?
Right.
So when they
Other
unzipped
than
it,
Dexter. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
okay, yeah, that's a given. All right, so when they unzipped it, they found human legs wrapped in a trash bag. And within 2 days, two more matching suitcases were found nearby, one containing a torso and a head, and the other arms. When they were taken to forensics, it revealed that the remains did belong to Bill McGuire. An autopsy showed he had been shot 3 times with a .38 caliber handgun, once in the head and twice in the torso. This calm suburban disappearance turned into a grisly homicide investigation.
Ooh.
So what followed was a painstaking police investigation, but largely on circumstantial evidence. Police recovered searches from the McGuire's home, which included their computer, with searches like, you guessed it, how to commit murder,
Oh my God.
undetectable poisons, gun laws, and how to purchase. These things all were suggesting a premeditated effort on someone's part. So they did share the computer. So it could have been, it wasn't, I don't think they could determine who had logged in or anything like that. So Melanie had purchased a 38 caliber revolver in a shop in Pennsylvania just 48 hours before Bill, quote unquote, vanished. So prosecutors were going to argue that this was the murder weapon. She claimed she had to buy the gun for Bill because he had a felony driving record and he couldn't get a handgun in his name. And she stated that she had bought the gun and then gave it to him right before he, quote unquote, left and disappeared. So among searches in the house, they found a bottle of chloral hydrate and syringes in Bill's car. Chloral hydrate, if you don't know, is a sedative, usually what they give for pre-surgical situations, like if you need to be just like kind of sedated a little bit before you get the good stuff. All right, and they traced the prescription to a pharmacy near where the McGuire children attended daycare and determined that the prescription had been forged. It was concluded that the suitcases did match a set owned by McGuire's, and fibers on a bullet lodged in Bill's body matched polyester fibers from the couple's furniture. This suggested the shooter used a homemade muffler or, silencer to muffle the sound when firing the weapon. And also a medical grade blanket was found with the body that matched supplies from the clinic where Melanie had worked or was working.
So sloppy.
Yeah, she apparently didn't listen to us.
No.
She didn't watch enough.
No.
All right. So, icicles, people, icicles. I'm just kidding.
That was
all right. Good. I remember when I was in Megan's class and we had to come up with like ideas of how we would get away. I'm like, icicles.
Yeah.
Icicles.
Melts away.
Body in the river. All right. PPE, icicles. Anyway. So this is not me telling you how to do anything, nor am I suggesting anything. Disclaimer.
Right.
I'm trying to get a new job. All right. Thank you. Moving along. All right. So according to the trial testimony in later reportings, Bill McGuire had multiple affairs during his marriage to Melanie. And they discovered that these weren't rumors, just people were whispering after he died, but there was documentation of his relationships to which Melanie herself uncovered, and that deeply altered her course of thinking throughout the marriage. She would testify that she began to suspect Bill was cheating when his behavior shifted. He had increased secrecy about where he was, what he was doing. He was emotionally distant, and he would be gone and couldn't explain where he was or where he had been. Eventually, the suspicion turned into confirmation. She discovered emails and phone records and texts linking Bill to at least 2 extramarital relationships.
So he was sloppy too.
Yeah. I think he wanted to be caught. I think you did one out.
Yeah.
We'll read that. Yeah. And according to one claim, she confronted the woman directly and learned that Bill had portrayed himself as separated, and unhappy. And I watched the movie about this too. And in that movie, they portray that she confronted this woman at her clinic. So this woman who had been cheating came into the clinic and was a client within her clinic. And something about her and her boyfriend were trying to get pregnant.
No.
Yes. So I don't know if that's true, but that's what the Lifetime movie I watched. I was like, So friends later described Melanie when she finds this out as devastated, of course, and humiliated. Like, why does this happen to me? I'm a perfect wife kind of situation. And she was the primary caregiver to her kids, the 2 young boys, when he would go away and spend his time and money on these other women. She was feeling a financial strain and emotional damage was setting in, and the couple was already dealing with debt, looming mortgage that they just took out to buy this new big humongous home, and the pressure to keep up with society and maintain their appearances, so to speak. It was kind of a very hoity-toity world she lived in. and she dumped her husband's remains in a Michael Kors bag. Anyway, Melanie, reportedly told some people close to her that she was beginning to feel trapped and betrayed by her husband. He wanted his freedom, yet he was unwilling to walk away from his responsibilities cleanly in a divorce. So by early 2004, the marriage was no longer just strained, it had become fractured. So while Bill's infidelity topped with, he did have a gambling addiction, it just kind of sent their marriage in a spiral. And then Melanie would have her own affair that would later become the central pillar of the prosecution's theory. So Melanie herself had started a relationship with Dr. Bradley Miller. He had become a new physician at the fertility clinic where she was working. Of course, Dr. Miller was married, and in fact, that complicated the relationship from the start. They would meet in hotel rooms and that kind of thing. But according to the court records, the affair was emotionally intense and sustained, but not just a brief encounter, but ongoing and involved frequent meetings and communication. The prosecution began to paint the affair as a motivation. They argued that Melanie would be with Dr. Miller permanently, that both her marriage and his stood in the way. Divorce, in their view, wasn't moving quickly enough, and custody battles, finances, and reputations threatened the future image she had imagined. However, Miller himself became a suspect, and he was questioned by the police. He initially lied about his relationship with Melanie, but then later admitted to the affair only after being confronted with some evidence. They had private investigators and police sit outside the hotel room and caught them both going in and coming out. But he did have an alibi for the night Bill disappeared, and he was never charged. But his credibility at this point had kind of been blown away. So to this day, Miller still denies his involvement in the murder. So despite no direct eyewitnesses or solid forensic evidence at the alleged crime scene, the web of circumstantial evidence pointed heavily towards Melanie. She was arrested on June 2nd, 2005, so a year later. And over the next year, charge after charge began to pile up, including, of course, first-degree murder, perjury, desecration of human remains, and unlawful possession of a firearm. In March of 2007, Melanie went on trial. Prosecutors argue that she killed her husband so she could pursue her future with her lover, Dr. Bradley. Although Dr. Miller had this alibi, he was still entangled in controversy. The prosecution's case was framed Melanie as a meticulous planner who killed to be free and free herself from unwanted marriage. So by April 23rd, 2007, so after 3 long years, a jury finally found her guilty. She was sentenced to life in prison, plus additional years for all those other offenses I was telling you about. And since her incarceration at New Jersey's Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women, she has maintained her innocence, even in interviews years later. And then she even had a 2020 sit-down interview on ABC News. She reiterated that someone else killed her husband, and she claimed mistakes in how ballistic evidence was represented. Her appeals have been denied repeatedly, and observers remain sharply divided. Some see the case as textbook example of circumstantial but compelling evidence, while others, including criminologists, and there's a podcast called Direct Appeal, who really dug deep into her story, and they argue that there's just way too many gaps in the state's case to raise questions about reasonable doubt.
How does she cut up his body and everything by herself, too?
It showed her using like hedge trimmers in the movie, but I don't know. Yeah, in the bathtub, but I don't know if that's true either. Wow. All right, so a quick review of the timeline to get us up to speed. So April 2004, McGuire marriage existed only in name. Bill was seeing other women and planning a future outside of the marriage. Melanie had fallen in love with her married doctor. Financial pressure was mounting due to Bill's gambling addiction and the new house that they had just purchased. Divorce papers loomed along with custody implications. Prosecutors would later argue that this was the volatile mix: mutual infidelity and fear of losing control, competing futures, and creating a perfect storm. Defense attorneys countered that affairs explain motive for divorce, but not murder. So, and the question that everybody wants to know, so when does betrayal become deadly, remains at the heart of this case. So, this story didn't begin with violence, it began with secrets, with lies told quietly and then discovered loudly, with two people looking for an escape and finding it in other people's arms. At the end, the jury had decided whether those affairs were simply evidence of a broken marriage or a spark that lit something far darker. Bill dreamed of living in Virginia Beach. That was his dream. As McGuire's marriage unraveled, Bill wasn't just emotionally checked out, he was actively engaging a new life, one that didn't include New Jersey or Melanie. It was a life that had a location, Virginia Beach. He had been previously stationed there and served in the Navy. According to the testimony statements from people who were close to him, Virginia Beach represented something to him that was deeply personal, from familiarity, it can talk freedom and reinvention. It was a place tied to his military past, a coastal city where he had once felt purposeful and unburdened. So he really wanted to go and be there, and she did not. She wanted the lavish lifestyle of living in the big home and working at her clinic. Because apparently she was a really good nurse and was really, personable and really enjoyed her job. So in the next months leading up to his death, Bill spoke openly about wanting to leave New Jersey altogether. He talked about starting over, relocating south, and about shedding what he viewed as a collapsing marriage and mounting responsibilities. He couldn't understand why Melanie wanted to upgrade and not relocate. So these were some of their fights. Like, he wanted just to go be on the beach, and she wanted to be in this, multi-million-dollar home. He couldn't understand about her passion for working in the fertility clinic. And more evidence introduced at the trial suggested that Bill was planning a future independent of his marriage, like he was going to go regardless. He had discussed separation, divorce, and the possibility of relocating with several friends. Some witnesses recalled him expressing even excitement of the idea of living near the ocean and free from constant conflict. Prosecutors argued that Bill's plans directly threatened Melanie's sense of stability. A move to Virginia would mean divorce on Bill's terms, potential custody disputes that would happen to be across state lines. Without his and her income together, she would be in financial crisis. And the state suggested that Bill's confidence about starting over may have clashed violently with her fears of abandonment, loss of control, and humiliation. Well, apparently she wasn't too worried about being abandoned.
Right? It's all about that money.
The defense argued the opposite. All about that? Yeah. Something. Mm-hmm. I think to her it was all about a lifestyle. I don't know that it was necessarily a whole lot of money. It was just the lifestyle, like the perfect life. 2 kids, a husband, a big home. I'm a nurse. He's a programmer. You know what I mean? Like, just being able to say,
keep up with the Joneses.
I have that
perfect life.
Exactly. I didn't know if people still said that anymore.
I don't know if they do.
All right. So the defense was, yeah, I do, but I'm old. It's like, it wasn't just about the Skrilla kids. It's I don't even know what they say anymore. Anywho, so as I said, the defense was arguing the opposite. They argued that Bill was impulsive and reckless and already was halfway out the door, and that his disappearance fit a pattern of escape, not execution. So Virginia Beach keeps coming more and more into play in this story. It becomes a symbol. To Bill, it was this fresh start. To Melanie, it may have represented his past, finality, the end of a marriage, the end of her family, and the life she thought she controlled. To the jury, it was a puzzle piece, one that could point either toward motive or towards doubt. And like so much in Melanie's case, whether you see Virginia Beach as a dream interrupted or a story rewritten after death depends on which narrative you believe. So today, Melanie McGuire remains one of the most talked about cases in that area, not for its brutality, but for how it transformed this ordinary family tragedy into a dramatic legal storm. Whether a calculated killer or a tragic victim of circumstance, Melanie McGuire's name will remain etched into criminal history, debated by lawyers, podcasters, and armchair detectives alike. On July 19th, 2007, at the age of 34, Miss McGuire was sentenced to life in prison plus 5 years for perjury.
You know what I picture in my head is she was like, you want to live near the beach, on the beach so bad, I'm going to put you in the ocean.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. You want to be there, you're going to be there.
Yeah,
I wonder if she thought it would just like sink and then never be.
probably.
So there was like all this controversy too about, did she really go to kind of like prove where she was when the bodies would have been, according to like forensics, and how long bodies have been in water, and then them being in plastic and then in a suitcase. How does that play into, the timeline of bodies in water, and what happens to bodies in water, and what happens to bodies in salt water, all that kind of things.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's ever traveled up east, or if you live up east. A lot of the roads up there are toll roads. So you either have to pay a toll or you have an easy pass. So when you live up there, you usually have this pass that you can use so you don't have to get money and keep throwing it into the toll booth. So you pay yearly for this easy pass. And I think now they're even just barcode stickers that you just, or on your dashboard, or on your window, what's that called? Windshield. Can't even think. And they just scan as you go through. So they did find her easy pass, and they did show that data showing that her car did go through 2 toll booths the day after the murder, contradicting her claim that she was shopping for furniture in some other place. But before the suitcases and before the gun, before Chesapeake Bay, there was betrayal on both sides. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, so they did have her zooming through the state to dump her husband, I think.
That is interesting. And
yes.
They were both very sloppy in everything they did.
I know. I was kind of proud of myself, though, for finding a case that didn't happen in the 50s and wasn't about mommy issues.
We tend to, be interested in
I have a couple
things.
more of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple more of those in my file.
You know what else is interesting is the last name in your story. McGuire was also a last name
I know.
in my story that I covered.
Yes.
And if you guys,
I think it is spelled different.
Yeah, it's just weird. If you haven't listened to the exclusive bonus episode on Patreon or Buzzsprout Plus, it's about 2 cousins that were involved, and then one breaks up with the other, and there's jealousy and murder. But it was an interesting one, but same last name. And
yes, check it out, Patreon people, or buy Nyoka coffee.
Yeah. And I think that we should cover the Athena Strand case. If you guys aren't aware of that going on right now, the trial's going on. This little girl, I think she was 7 or 8. She was murdered by a FedEx driver when he was delivering a package to her house. And I just started listening to the trial. I'm only on day 1. but it's on Court TV that you can find on YouTube. And this might be one to cover because
Yes.
it's horrific, honestly, what happened to this girl. Scumbag. What a scumbag.
Yes.
Anyways,
so many
so
of them.
that might be coming up. So I'm going to listen to the trial so you don't have to. And yeah, we'll do that. But got anything else for us, Heather?
See you next time.
Hell yeah.
Here.
So, if you can't get enough of Operation Evil, consider supporting the podcast by joining Patreon or Operation Evil Plus on Buzzsprout. When you join, not only will you have access to exclusive bonus episodes, but you will also get a shout out, and there is over 50 episodes ready for you to binge on. The links to join can always be found in the show notes. If you can't join our Patreon or Operation Evil Plus on Buzzsprout, consider supporting us for free by rating our show, telling a friend about the podcast, and or liking our Facebook page. And I appreciate each and every one of you for listening, as always. And we'll be back next time with a new episode. Thanks again, Heather. That was a great case to cover. It was a
You're welcome. Thank
literal
you.
case, a suitcase. Literal.
Yes. Ha.
Yes. Ha. See what I did
3
there?
of them. 3. 3 in
3.
1.
That's right. Not 1,
A
not 2.
designer case. A designer case.
Yeah. Shouldn't even use the cheap ones. So there you have it. We'll be back next time. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening.